my open space recollection is the joy and the excitement of going to visit my grandmother and exploring in her garden all through the year, every month of the year, and picking grapes. Until years later, I found out that she tied the grapes with dental floss on the bushes in her garden. Very clever grandmother who got me outside. Well, welcome everyone. And we're going to start our story. We heard the data, we heard the numbers, very important for saving open space. A lot of policymakers, a lot of elected officials want to know what is it for our pocketbook, what is it for our budget. We know that's compelling, we have those numbers. But the stories often tell why people get involved in this process. It talks about what they have in their heart, what they have in their spirit, and what they want to do for the community. So here we have our storytellers that are going to tell you about their particular experiences. And we're going to start with David Genova, who does have the longest title I have seen in a long time. His business card must be 2 pages long. Health Promotion Director for the Office of Community Information and Education, the Department of Montgomery County's Health and Human Services. Dave.
Thank you. How many of your childhood memories took place in a public park, perhaps a garden, or a friend's backyard? So I grew up in Berks County, and I lived on a fairly busy road. And we had houses on either side of us. Behind our house, you wouldn't find a single blade of green grass. It was simply an oversized sidewalk, basically. It was long enough to be able to put a basketball hoop at the front, but not wide enough to be able to shoot from either side. But my brother and I, growing up, didn't care. The reason why we didn't really care is because we had lots of open space around us. It was either a short walk or a very quick bicycle ride. Across the street and down a few blocks, we had a friend named Andy. And behind his house was an open field. And by field, when I'm 8 years old, it seemed huge. Now that I'm 39, it looks like a postage stamp. But there was a field, and we called it Andy's Field. And it was large enough for my brother and I to be able to kick a soccer ball around, throw baseball, just run around and be kids. Behind our house, up a few blocks, was another open space. We called it the Bumpy Hill, and for obvious reasons. Like this, all the way down the hill, but it was green grass, open space, public space, and we used that space to be able to sled ride. I mean, that was the time of our life for those few months where there was snow on the ground. There was also some walking paths up there that we were able to take part in and relax. And then behind that was actually a mountain, and one of our friends lived right off that mountain. Also public open space. We called it Skull Mountain growing up, and we built forts there and just played. Kids being kids. Can you imagine growing up in a neighborhood where spaces like that aren't accessible? For many living in the most underserved communities, places like that are inaccessible or sometimes even non-existent. There's a growing body of evidence that directly correlates your health and well-being and being outside and in nature. The benefits of being outside and in nature have a direct impact on the immediate and long-term health of yourselves, your families, and your children. Open space is absolutely critical in every neighborhood. Most of us understand that physical activity improves the physical side of our health, like our weight, our muscles, our bones, our ability to do everyday activities. But what a lot of people don't understand is that physical activity also improves our brain health, specifically memory and our mental health. If I ask you to go outside and walk on the Schuylkill River Trail for 15 minutes and to come back in here and listen to these stories, you'll be better prepared to remember that information, okay? In my division of health promotion, We empower residents of Montgomery County to live healthy lifestyles. And one way we do this is to get people outside. We have a great partnership with the Parks and Trails in Montgomery County, specifically the Norristown Farm Park, which is home to the Pennsylvania Horticulture Society's community garden, which impacts hundreds of families and produces thousands of pounds worth of produce. We also have the Montgomery County Trail Challenge, which the Norristown Farm Park participates in, which is actually right here for you. So the Montgomery County Trail Challenge has been a part of the county for the last 7 years. Last year, we had our highest total number of registrations, which was over 2,500 people. 90% of which that completed our end of the year survey said that it had a direct impact on their mental health, even before physical health, which I find very, very fascinating. We also have the Montgomery County Trigger Trails event, which happens around this time, which is Halloween season. We just had our Trigger Trails event at the Norristown Farm Park, and we had over 150 people participating come out and enjoy it with their kids. And then we have the Montgomery County Storybook, which incorporates a storybook about physical activity or nature, and you dissemble the children's story. You put it on a realtor sign, which looks like this, and you space these realtor signs so many feet apart from each other. So you're incorporating literacy, you're incorporating physical activity, and you're incorporating time spent in nature. And you're being able to do that with your family and your children. Before I end, I want to read to you a testimonial. So the Montgomery County staff received the following email from a family detailing the impact of the Montgomery County Trail Challenge on their family, especially their son, Chris. We want to thank you and your staff for organizing this wonderful outdoor activity for residents of our county. This is the second year that our family has participated, and this has been a special accomplishment for our son, Chris, who hiked 10 trails this year and was pleased to receive the Adventure Medal about 2 weeks ago. Chris has severe epilepsy, along with movement limitations on his right side, all the result of a prenatal brain injury. But despite these physical challenges, he enjoys being outdoors and enjoys hiking. The Montgomery County Trail Challenge provided a wonderful opportunity for him to get exercise and experience the outdoors. Because of his seizure disorder, he's not able to walk very far, but he was pleased to be able to walk at least 1 mile on nearly all of the trails. This experience also provided some great memories for us, as we're able to do this together as a family. Typically, my wife dropped Chris and me off at a trailhead, and then she parked the car at another trailhead that was within a reasonable distance for Chris to walk, and then he met us along the way. We look forward to participating again next year. We hope to have Chris fitted for a recumbent trike so that he can enjoy more of the trail system. We put together a small montage of pictures from our participation in the Trail Challenge this year, aligned with the county trail map for family and friends to see what Chris accomplished. I thought you might enjoy seeing this too, so I've attached it here. Thanks again for all of your support of this great outdoor activity.
Thank you, Dave. That's direct use benefits with a story of a citizen of Montgomery County and a family's love of the trail and improvement in their quality of life. Next, we'll go to Environmental Services. Chris Mendel, Executive Director of Pennypatch Ecological Restoration Trust, with that great green sponge. Tell us what it does.
Thank you, Dulcie, and thank you all for giving me your time and your ear this evening. This story is a little bit personal, a little bit apocalyptic, a little bit science fiction-y, and it's all thanks to Steve and his economic regressions. My story really begins with me, as with everybody's story, with their childhood. My childhood was in Buffalo, New York, and in the late 1980s and the early 1990s, the industry of Buffalo had been largely gone for the better part of 20 years at that point. And I was a kid lurching haltingly into similar to the building that we're in right now. Places that were no doubt churning, I mean seething with human activity and with smoke and with dust and production, as this was the lifeblood of industrial America in the 20th century. And 20 years following the very abrupt silence of that, I'm that teenager walking down those rail abutments and the back ends of those industrial complexes, and they are quiet, and they are full of sumac and asters. And as that young man, I start to realize the beauty of warblers and finches and blue jays. And I start to also recognize the relationships of skunks and those structures, right? And possums and raccoons. And that starts, thankfully, I have those experiences, and it begins my professional development and my interest in how I progress myself through high school and through college. Fast forward now 30 years following that, I'm extremely happy that I'm living at the Pennypack Trust in eastern Montgomery County, and we live in the middle of 863 contiguous protected acres of the Pennypack Ecological Restoration Trust, along just 4 miles of that creek. And we are an island of nature, utterly surrounded by the neighborhoods that Stephen was describing. Southampton, Brenathan, Lower Moreland, Upper Moreland, Willow Grove. There is almost nowhere to grow from a natural perspective. There's so much residential around us. And Steve and the team from Montgomery County pop up with the idea for the return on environment. And I don't know if you regarded his analysis as mental gymnastics to think about cost avoidance, but it was difficult for me to understand how it was they were going to put a dollar value on all of this nature that I have been obsessed with for decades now. And I went apocalyptic with it, quite frankly. I thought about what happens, and I think about this gentleman's question here just a few minutes ago. What happens when we let go of the value of nature? So what happens if the Pennypack Trust is no longer the Pennypack Trust, but reverts to its context? And we have laundromats, grocery stores, single detached housing, maybe some light industry like the cardboard company next to me in Upper Moreland Township. And all of a sudden, all of that $1.2 million worth of economic benefit that the Pennypack Trust has, mostly in terms of water protection, water source protection, flood mitigation, a little bit of habitat, a lot of carbon storage. What happens when we have to technologically replace that? And I see myself in this new development in the middle of what used to be the Pennypack Trust. And there might be some giant inhaling machine that is solar powered and has a scrubber on it that takes in dirty air and exhales clean air. What happens when the Pennypack Creek is no longer really a living, breathing creek, but a drainage way for all of these developments? And we have sediment forebays that need to handle the, 100,000 pounds of sediment that the Pennypack Creek currently averts from the rest of the Pennypack and ultimately to the Delaware, to all of our drinking water. What does that look like when that again is seething with construction workers and the reverse lights and the reverse sounds of that heavy equipment as it moves in and out of this now man-made offset of ecological benefit? And I think about how the machine in the garden that is now surrounded by all of those neighborhoods, is performing those tasks exquisitely and quietly and almost unknown. And I think about the value of this report and who it's really trying to talk to. I would wager a guess that most of us drank the Kool-Aid about the value of environment a long time ago. We don't need to be told that it saves us that many millions of dollars in order to protect it. It is intrinsic to us. But we are trying to talk to those folks who might think differently and who might feel differently about the necessity, the efficiency of these natural systems and doing what they do, and convey the fact that they are irreplaceable. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chris. Pretty dramatic, pretty dramatic. Now we go to our host for the evening, Elaine Schaefer, Executive Director of Schuylkill Greenways, and the economic activity that she's going to share with her own experience.
Thank you, Kelsey. So first I'll share my childhood memory, or where I started my love of the outdoors. I grew up in Larchmont, New York, which is right outside of Manhattan. And every day after school, literally every day, I would go to my best friend's house and play in what I thought was woods behind her house. Turns out it was actually like the New York Department of Transportation buffer between the highway, but it felt like woods. And we made an apartment, a pretend apartment back there. We would pretend every day that we would go to, be college students in our apartment every single day. And that memory is etched in my mind in our nice Department of Transportation woods. So I am the executive director of Schuylkill River Greenways, and we connect people to the river and the trail. I have the fortune of working in this building, and if you go outside in this parking lot and you look to your right, you will see the Schuylkill River Trail and the river. And if you look across the parking lot, you will see Take It Outdoors. Take It Outdoors is our sister organization. It was a private outfitter that we purchased during the pandemic. Through those entities, the work we do on the trail, on the river, and with Take It Outdoors, this is so not theory or theoretical to me. It is transaction I see every single day. I can give you examples that literally occur almost every single day of the economic impact that we have. Every program that we run, we learned a long time ago, people like to exercise, they like to be outside, they also like to reward themselves for it. With a little ice cream, a beer, having lunch, everyone wants something to do after they do their exercise. So we combine that, and when we do programming, we do, going out on a bike ride and a kayak ride, and then going to our local brewery. We have a big bike ride where 300 people come and ride together. Every single one of them goes to Sly Fox in town and gets a beer and a sandwich afterwards, which we pay for. Another example, our outfitter this summer decided we needed all new kayaks, so he put out selling 22 good kayaks that are in pretty good condition. Come at Saturday at 7 o'clock. At 6:30, there were people lined up at every kayak claiming them because they wanted to make sure that they got one of those kayaks. We get phone calls from overseas, people from Germany, from Austria. I'm planning a trip. I heard about the Schuylkill River Trail. Can you tell me where the map is? Can you tell me where I can find itinerary building? It's something that is so obvious to us that putting this together and seeing it in writing is almost so unnecessary because we see it so clearly every single day. And it makes a big impact in the towns. I will just say on a larger scale, for any of you who know Manhattan at all, and you saw the High Line come in, that is like a little rinky-dink little trail, to be honest. And it turned the meatpacking district in Chelsea, which were the armpit of Manhattan. Now it's the most expensive real estate you can get, and there's a crane on every building. And that is just a typical example of what happens when these trails come through communities. Phoenixville, Manayunk, you can see the transformation when these trails come through. And Pottstown is next, because the Schuylkill River Trail will be complete from Philadelphia to Reading as of next summer.
Economic activity, absolutely, and beachfront too. It's great. So next we move to Gail Farmer, Executive Director of Pacific Trails, and her property values mega story.
Thank you, Dulcie. Yes. I'm going to start with my story. I was born in 1975. I am solidly a Gen Xer, and I was one of those kids who common directive from my mom was, go outside, don't come back till dinner. And there was a hill behind our house. We just called it the hill, like the lumpy hill, or ours was just the hill. And that's where my sisters went when my mom wanted to get us out of her hair. And some of my best and my most formative memories happened on that hill, just like Chris was, everybody here basically has been talking about. And I'm sure you all have similar stories. The hill was anything we needed it to be, basically. It allowed us to reconstruct our complex world on a small scale. And some days, we were brave explorers, and other days we were in need of help. And the hill was always there to give us exactly what we needed for whatever we were going through. And so the hill still serves me to this day, my experiences on the hill. And it's a big part of why I chose a career in the environment. And I work at Wissahickon Trails. If any of you, I don't know, there's not many people from eastern part of the county, but we are in southeastern Montgomery County, eastern Montgomery County. We work in the Wissahickon watershed, which is all the land area that drains into the Wissahickon Creek, which is an impaired waterway, and it's a tributary to the Schuylkill. And our work, we have been working for 65 years to preserve open space, to make it accessible to people through building trails, and educate and engage the public and enjoy with them the properties that are maintained as open space. So we've heard a lot of great stories tonight about the return on environment, the way the environment sort of gives back to us as individuals and to the community. And I think really at the end of the day, all these things, clean water, clean air, free recreational opportunities, activities to engage with your kids, all these benefits, they're essentially, they're why property values increase. Open space improves our quality of life, and people are willing to pay for that. I can't tell you why. I'm still trying to understand why if you happen to move within a half mile of the Green Ribbon Trail and Preserve, you'll have an increase in property value by 13.5%. I'd love to chat about that. That's really high, but we have protected a lot of open space in our geography. So Wissahickon Trails has protected with our partners just under 1,300 acres. We maintain 12 nature preserves in the watershed, and we have 24 miles of trails. And the thing I love that I got to talk about home values is that I think of all of the benefits, home value is the one that really reflects people's values, because if you're willing to pay more to live near open space, that reflects the fact that you think open space is important. And one of the privileges in my job and in my role that it's probably my favorite part of my job, is getting to meet all these people in the community who value open space and who are willing to act on behalf of that value. And they might act by being active in their local municipality. We had someone here who mentioned, that they've been trying to talk to their municipality about an open space, a forested lot that's for sale, and she'd like the township to acquire it. It's people like that who show up at their municipal meetings and keep the environment on the agenda, advocate for the environment. That's what allows our work to happen. We really wouldn't, Wissahickon Trails, we just, for example, we're in the process of trying to preserve a 12-acre property. We live, I don't know if I mentioned, it's a very developed part of the county, 74% urbanized part of the county. And so, for us, a 12-acre parcel of open space is like, that's really great. If you're in other parts of the state or other parts of the county, 12 acres might seem small. But 12 acres is of high value, both in terms of there's not a lot of large parcels of open space left, and because the property values and where we work are very high. So it's $3.25 million for that 12-acre property. So anyways, to make this acquisition happen, this property sort of sits right in the middle of a bunch of open space that's already preserved from over the last 20 years. There's about 200 acres of open space. Pacific Trails owns some of it, which we acquired by working with the property owner who owned the property beforehand, other neighbors, the county, the municipality, the state. Municipality owns another 100 acres or so adjacent to our preserve. And then there's this 12 acres, and then we have 2 more preserves on the other side, far side of that property. So acquiring this property connects, several hundred acres of open space. So it's an important parcel. And in order to make it happen at $3.25 million, our annual budget is like 1.6. It's like a big number. It took people, and it took the state. It's taken the county, the township, and a whole bunch of neighbors and community members who are putting up about half of the money for this acquisition to be possible. And the thing that I think about a lot in terms of open space protection, that's a big lift, and it's only possible by getting all these different stakeholders together and moving in the same direction. And it is beautiful when that happens. But you think about, in Wissahickon Trail's 65-year history, we've protected with our partners about 1,700 acres out of 32,000 acres. Like it's not a strategy that allows us to move very fast, and be very successful. I mean, so the thing that I think about a lot is, ordinances and zoning and what are the rules and regs around development. And I think that's sort of when we're, at least in the eastern part of the county, as it gets more and more built out, that's where, I would implore you as county residents, if you're thinking, how can I be impactful? How can I help protect open space? I don't have, $500,000 to give. It would say participate in your planning code, planning commissions, understand what the ordinances and the zoning rules are around development, and use your voice in those contexts. That's a great way to be a part of open space preservation. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Gail. But what Gail's talking about is how these communities that start with sometimes a few advocates, and the community develops and things are saved, that culture is contagious because people find they don't start out as open space advocates. They know they like a place. And then they find out that caring makes them an advocate. And they go to the municipal officials, they say, we're concerned about this, and where can municipal officials spend those community dollars on something that does not get used up and does not go away? When you save open space, that's what you're giving to citizens for today, tomorrow, and forever. So it's really important. Marla Heckscher, who is a member of our Agricultural Preservation, Montgomery County Agricultural Preservation Board, also known as our Farm Board, and also a supervisor in Lower Frederick, will talk about her story that talks about people who really did put their energy around this.
Thank you, and it's not my story, it's the community story. But first, I'm going to try and do this in 2 sentences. When I was growing up, there were 3 streets in the neighborhood that all met at an open lot, and that's where all of the kids in the neighborhood met and grew up together. So that's my story. So I'm just going to be talking about Lower Frederick, but there are a number of communities in Montgomery County, not enough, unfortunately. partly because we have a fairly new and underutilized sewage plant, which developers love it. Communities with new underutilized sewage plants, and also because it's a little cheaper to live there and the quality of life, so people are trying to move there from other areas. And residents were concerned that our quality of life was going to change very rapidly. So that was the demand. So 2019, it started with a resident petition. So I first want to say you don't need a petition to have an open space fund, but a petition serves to tell your elected officials, we in the community want to have this thing. So that went before the board in 2019. The board then, which I was on, did not agree that they needed an open space fund, and for better or worse, the elected officials need to vote to move forward. So there was an election that year. There were some new board members. The board a year later believed differently, and in 2020 they voted for the open space fund. So elections do matter, I'll just say that. In between voting to get it on the ballot, which you have to do 13 weeks before the general election, residents said we need more information. So we brought a number of speakers and people into our meetings, and we put presentations up on our website about open space, and Kate Harper was one of the ones who came to speak to us. So that was the education process. So one of the first things that we did in 2020 after, 2021, when the referendum passed, is we set up an open space committee. This is not required, but the board felt that we should have a resident volunteer-based entity that was not the board that would prioritize and rank properties for open space purchase. And that is a 7-member committee that meets every month, like all our other committees. And one of the first things they did was they had a public event. So again, I keep saying the word public, public, public. You want your public to be involved. So they had an event which the county helped out with, where residents identified areas that they liked and also specific parts of the community that they wanted to preserve as open space. And then the committee used that information to help establish priorities and criteria for preservation. So that's kind of the story. Where I'll fast forward to actually tonight, right after this meeting, I've got to run back to Little Frederick, and we are actually on our agenda tonight. We are considering spending some of that money to go towards purchase of some open space in the community. So that's kind of the reality. Almost 2 years later, it takes a little while for the fund to accumulate, but that's what your dollars are for, and we're hoping to leverage some of that money with some grant funding to permanently preserve some open space in the community. So what were the lessons? First of all, education is really important. A referendum is not the kind of thing people usually study up on, so voters often show up to vote and they see a referendum, they don't understand it. We were very fortunate, Natural Lands and Heritage Conservancy helped prepare some flyers which went out to residents, which explained about open space, the value of it, the pros and cons, and also what the cost would be to residents. I have to go back to the board too. You need to have elected officials who believe that open space is important and are committed to do it. And I want to add one other thing here, that between 2019 and 2020, we had an earlier board that wanted to make that decision. The later board felt that the voters should decide, that the taxpayers who lived in the community, that they should decide through a democratic process, not the 5 people sitting on the board. So that, I'm only speaking for myself, but I felt very strongly that we should not make that decision. Once you have an open space fund, the criteria and the process needs to be very transparent. So I keep saying public and transparency. Residents need to understand how much money there is. They need to understand what the committee and the board is looking for. They need to understand how a piece of property leads up to the top and where the money is being spent. wanna say something that is also really important, which is, it's a tax. We heard this over and over again, people say, we don't wanna pay another tax. We have enough taxes. Yes, it is a tax. We call it an open space fund. It is a tax. There's two ways you can do it. You can do it with earned income, or you can do it with property tax. We decided to go for earned income, also called EIT, and the reason being that people who are retired, who are on Social Security, do not pay the tax. Elderly people who have property would pay it. Also, lower income people do not pay it. And we felt it was more fair for people who made more money to pay more of the tax and people who made less money to pay less. So we ended up setting it at 50 cents per $1,000 of income. So someone making $100,000 would pay $50 tax. So that's how that worked out. And then, maybe not last but least, but then you're always gonna have a lot of people who say, we don't need an open space fund. We have enough open space. Look at these parks we have. Look at this procurement trail we have. Why do we need this? There's so many other things we need. Anything in any municipality, you will have people who are for it, people who are against it. Fortunately, we had more people who were for it than were against it, and so it passed at the ballot. And we made it a very small tax, so honestly, people did not complain about it afterwards, you barely noticed it. But you are gonna have naysayers, and we also have people saying things like, well, you're gonna buy up all the development property, and then we won't have any property tax. That's not going to happen. We talked about how many millions of dollars. We didn't have that kind of money. We were looking at very specific, targeted properties that had environmental and recreational value. So I want to leave you with a couple thoughts. One of them is, it's if you're an elected official or a committee, it's really important to understand what your residents want. Do they want to maintain open space? Or are they okay without having it? I don't like throwing anybody under the bus, but all of you know communities where they're developing like crazy and every single piece of land is being built on. If that's what your residents want, then they're not gonna have an open space fund. I will say though, Limerick is looking at it. From Limerick? Yes.
No.
Right. Maybe it's a little late, but they're looking at it. So you don't wanna wait too long, but it's a referendum, so people have to vote for it. Be transparent, that's really key. Find allies and advocates who will help you. So again, Natural Lands and Heritage Conservancy, and a number of organizations, who I'm sorry, I can't remember, came and spoke to us, provided materials. The education process was really key. And again, no matter what you do, there's always gonna be people who are gonna complain about it, and you just gotta put on your big boy pants and put up with that. So that was our story. I just want to add one other thing. There was a very recent change in the law about the open space funds. In the past, you could use 25% of it for maintenance, but only on open space that you purchased with the fund. They have now changed that. So you can now use that 25% on any open space. So we have parks that we had purchased many, many years ago. We can use that fund now for park maintenance. So that's another benefit to your community. Thank you.
Well, these are the stories, they're all different, and I know many of you either have your own stories now, or we hope you're gonna come back with your new stories next time we can meet on this subject. So I'll ask Bill to come up. Are you gonna close it out tonight, or?
Well, yeah, unless anybody has any questions, well, first of all, thanks for all your amazing stories. Also, thanks for getting us back on schedule. That was like an awesome job in many ways. We do have a few minutes if anybody has any questions